Hey guys, so today we're going to be looking at inferences. We're going to take a few little notes. What are inferences? We're going to do some picture prompts together and with our shoulder partners, and then we're going to break down into workshops and centers, and then we'll have an exit ticket for today. So why are we looking at inferences? Well, our standards one of our first standards says that we need to cite pieces of textual evidence to support analysis of what the text explicitly says, as well as inferences drawn from the text. What does that mean, Ms. Hale? That means that at the end of class today, I want you to be able to define the word inference, and I want you to be able to define the term textual evidence. Those are going to be so important. That is the base for this. You can see it says textual evidence and inferences in this standard. Additionally, I want you to be able to look closely at a text, any medium really, and make an inference. That one we definitely want to be able to do today. And then we're going to work on analyzing authors' words to determine multiple pieces of evidence, multiple things that prove your inference. So we're going to be working on that one in the days to come, but those first three are really going to be the ones I want us to focus on today. So I hope you're excited. I love this lesson, so I can't wait for you guys to love it too. All right, so let's do some note taking. I want you to get out your notebook so that we can write down a couple of words, and we're going to make some inferences as well. Okay, so you might be asking, what's an inference? The fact is, you make inferences every single day. Usually you do it without even realizing it. For example, if you sit down at lunch by your best friend and she moves away or gets up and goes to another table, you might infer that she's angry with you or you smell funny. If you get home from school and your dog runs up and licks you, you might infer that your dog missed you or that your dog's just really happy to see you. Basically, an inference is an educated guess. Write that down. An educated guess based on the evidence that is right in front of you. Also combined with your past experiences. Of course, I would pause and I would say this multiple times. I might even write it on the board. I would probably write it on the board. So inferences are required in everyday life, but they're also required in reading, watching movies, even listening to music. So in your notes, we are going to make some inferences about this picture. So we're going to start by looking at the evidence. What do we see? So we see a young lady. What does she have on her face? Glasses. What is she wearing? A white lab coat. And I would not give these to the students. I would have them raise their hand and provide me with these answers. She has on a stethoscope around her neck. What educated guess can we make based on what we see? We can infer that she is some kind of doctor, possibly a veterinarian. Maybe she's giving a checkup to the dog, writing him a prescription. The dog looks calm and at ease, and we would go through those things about why we make those inferences for the dog as well. So, good readers are constantly making inferences as they read literature, books, novels, made-up stories, or informational text. That could be anything that's real. It could be a book, it could be a newspaper. And so that's because writers don't always tell us everything explicitly. Explicitly, remember, means they state it exactly as it is. We don't have to guess. Well, authors don't always do that because they want us to think a little bit when we're reading. So we're going to look at this passage, and I want you guys to follow along as I read it aloud. Katie was excited about tonight. Happily, she put on her big red shoes and bright yellow outfit. Her mom helped Katie paint her face with a big red circle in each cheek. Just before Katie ran out the door to meet her friends, she attached a large squeaky nose on her, a large squeaky nose, placed a bright blue pointy hat on top of her head, and she grabbed an empty bag and went out into the night. Notice that this paragraph never tells us that Katie's going trick-or-treating for Halloween. But we immediately make that inference because of the details that the author has provided. The author tells us that Katie's mom is helping her to paint her face with big red circles. We know from personal experience, like seeing normal people in the real world, that this isn't ordinary makeup. So we know that it must be a special occasion. She's running out the door to meet her friends, so she doesn't seem to be in a play. Based on our past experiences, we know that plays are typically performed indoors. But it's the last sentence that really helps us to make that inference. Katie grabbed an empty bag and went out into the night. Because most people have been trick-or-treating, or at least seen others do it on TV or in the movies, we know from our experiences that it must mean that this is Halloween. These details that lead us to this conclusion are what we call textual evidence. So I want you to write this definition down in your folder. Textual evidence is specific information from a text that we use to support our inferences. And again, I would pause and I would make sure that my students have that definition down on as I wrote it on the board. Okay, we're going to be moving on to our picture prompt section with our partners. So before we move on, I want to make sure that you have written down a definition for inference and for textual evidence. And I want you to turn to your shoulder partner, and without looking at your notes, I want you to each give a definition. So one of you will give the definition for inference, and then you can tell your partner yes, no, or maybe you left this out. And then the other will give the definition for textual evidence. So I'll give them about 2 minutes to do this. And anytime that I do times, I will put that timer on the board, the big board, so that everyone can see it. Okay. So now that you and your table partner have made sure that you know those definitions, I want you to look around the room. I have big sheets of paper, and on the paper, there's a picture. As I have 22 students in this class, I will have 11 pictures around the room because they're going to work with their shoulder partner. So I'd ask all my students to go to a picture. All right, guys, so I'm going to give you a minute and a half on your picture, and you and your shoulder partner are going to take the marker that's attached, and you are going to write an inference. Don't write the evidence, just an inference. So I would put that timer on and let them make an inference. All right, guys, now you are going to go to the picture to your right. I'd give them about 20 seconds to transition. All right, you're going to look at the inference that the team before you made, and I'm going to give you about a minute to write down all of the evidence that you see in that picture that supports that inference. Then I would give them that time, and then they would continue rotating around the room. The next one, they would make an inference. The one after that, they would find the evidence for the inference before that. Of course, I would let them give them an example before, letting them know what they would put if they could not find textual evidence. For example, if someone made the inference that this woman is married, I would put no textual evidence because I don't see a ring on either of her fingers. There's not, I can't see her whole hand over here, so I can't determine that she's not, but I would want to make sure that they understood what it meant to give some people some positive feedback. We want to make sure that I want to make sure that they're able to give their peers positive feedback and take that constructive criticism well. So after they travel around the room and they've done all of the pictures, then I'm going to have them go back and do a gallery walk where they simply look. They're going to look at the inference they made and see if others were able to find that textual evidence. They're going to go back and look at other inferences that others made, things that maybe didn't pop into their head before. All right, guys, since we finished that, I want you to travel back to your seats and collect your things. All right, we're going to be doing workshops at this point. So, based on the information that you guys provided, state standard report, I had my advanced, my proficient, and my not proficient students. Of course, the kids won't know these groups, but I will have my advanced students together, my proficient students together, and I'll divide my not proficient students into two groups. So, how will that work? I'll start with a workshop with my some of my students who are not proficient, and then I will progress up to my advanced students. So my not proficient students, I'm going to have them doing a workshop with me where we're going to be analyzing some, reviewing inferences, doing some one-on-one practice questions, and then I'm going to move them to a station where they are going to get some very short sentences from the book Holes, and I'm going to have a list of various inferences, and they're going to take those evidence and sort them into the correct category. What inference does this go with? And my both of my not proficient students will be doing this activity. Then they'll progress to doing Holes passages, and you can see that on both of these groups, as well as my advanced and my proficient students. Holes passages will look something like this, where we will have paragraphs or a little bit longer passages from Holes, and they will make inferences based on the passages, and they'll highlight their evidence. Again, they'll be working in small groups with this. And then I'm going to have both of these groups do picture prompts. I'm going to give them different pictures, and I will have them make inferences and gather evidence based on those as well. So my proficient groups and my advanced group will be doing the little match girl, which is, I'm not going to give it to my not proficient students because the language in it is a little bit higher, but I feel like that these two groups will be able to be successful with this because we will have already read this story before. Another skill we work on in this unit is comparing and contrasting multiple mediums, and so they will be familiar with this language. I won't give it to my proficient students until I review it a little bit with them, just to make sure that they don't struggle with the language. They will be identifying some things in that, making some inferences that are a little bit more in depth because it requires them to identify that the young lady is having delusions. The last thing that I'm going to have my advanced students do that the other ones won't do is they're going to dig into the rubric a little bit more so they can see what it takes from them to make whatever kind of score they want to make. And of course, I do have my students setting goals on that. So they'll dig into that a little bit deeper by looking at different inferences, and they're going to be rating those inferences. And then I'll work with them independently on making their own inferences and rating their own inferences. Lastly, before they leave, I will double check on them, remind them about our standard, and we'll look at our learning targets. Did we identify an inference? And I'll pick someone randomly to give me that definition. I'll do the same thing with textual evidence. And then we'll discuss how we read closely to make inferences and how we began to find multiple pieces of evidence. And then lastly, I'll have them turn in an exit ticket on an index card where they make an inference about the end of Michael Jackson's Thriller. Again, we will have already read the lyrics to this and watched this video in length as we worked on comparing and contrasting multiple mediums. In addition to making an inference about the end of the movie, the end of the music video, I will have them provide two pieces of textual evidence in which that supports their inference. So I hope that they will be successful in identifying inferences and textual evidence, and that we'll be able to continue um, digging into the cognitive skills rubric and develop those inference skills. Thank you.